Well, all right, we'll have more discussions, of course, about the President's reply in Parliament. What are economists at this stage, happy with what the President has said today? Let's take a listen to what the President also had to say in that reply in Parliament today.
We are going to begin the preparatory work to review our macroeconomic strategy to ensure that our policy mix supports the inclusive growth that we're talking about. In preparing for the State of the Nation address, I mentioned that my wish to talk about a completely new city with skyscrapers, schools, universities, hospitals, and factories. This is what I talked to my staff about. I was advised to put that in the dreams section of the State of the Nation address. But it actually belongs in the main section on a future and desired reality that we want. At the current rate of urbanization and at the current rate of population growth, it is estimated that our cities will need to accommodate an extra 10 million people by 2030. The question we need to confront is, where will all these people live? Where will they also work? We are already facing significant backlogs in housing, in schools, in clinics, social services, as well as land in major urban centers. The ideal for your major urban centers is that your poor people must live in the city. They must live near the city. You need to crowd the cities. Now, the apartheid special planning threw our people completely out of the cities. And city space has now been taken by a whole number of other developments. We now need to imagine a future where our people are also going to live. Every successive wave of people coming to our cities live further and further away from the center, far away from jobs, far away from services, and far away from infrastructure, for transport infrastructure. This situation is not sustainable, and unless we find effective solutions, it is only going to get worse.
All right, let's chat a bit about that now and what the President had to say about the economy itself. Joining me on the line now is Dr. Iraj Abedian, who is a chief economist with Pan-African Investment and Research Services. Thank you very much for your time, Doc. I appreciate it very much. And, the President's State of the Nation address obviously came at a time when South Africa's economy is really taking a knock. Let me get your response, first of all, to what he said today.
I think the President is trying to strike a balance between, on the one hand, providing a vision for where South Africa has to aspire to in the next decade, given all the dynamics of our population, our legacy of apartheid, everything else. At the same time, he's got an imperative of very immediate short-term turnaround of the economy. And I think opponents flip-flop between the two wherever it suits them. From my point of view, if I was going to offer any criticism, it's just that there isn't enough urgency. There aren't enough tangible interventions that would lead to a real acceleration in investment. It is one thing to say we want investment from domestic economy and global economy. It's another thing to offer a set of credible and short-term effective interventions that would lead to investment, knowing that unless investments begin to flow, growth is going to be a dream.
Well, infrastructure to bolster job creation, for example, is one of the things that he mentions. But is there a clear plan from what you've heard on the how?
Exactly. No, there is no plan. I mean, we've had over the past 10 years. Remember, we have a cabinet committee for infrastructure coordination. We've had all kinds of talk of infrastructure, but nobody has defined. Nobody has put on the map 1 or 2 or 3 slides to the nation to say, this is what we mean by infrastructure. We hear of infrastructure, but then we see energy is lacking, water is lacking, cities are falling apart. And so where is this infrastructure? What do we mean by infrastructure? Infrastructure may mean different things to different people. So we need to, or the president, I believe, needs to go beyond the high-level statement of intention and so on, go very drill down, go below the definition, say this is what we mean infrastructure, a dam in this province, a road in that, a city here, and this is how we're going to make these things sustainable. And at the moment, we stay with the principle. Yes, everybody likes infrastructure, everybody likes investment, and it's wonderful if investment is local and international, but that's not going to get us anywhere.
Yeah, I want to talk about, one of what I certainly picked up. I know in the run-up to the State of the Nation address, you had the president meet with the board of Eskom. And Eskom, of course, without a doubt, continues to be a threat to the country's economy. Are you at all surprised, for example, I did not hear the mentioning of the unbundling of Eskom in the State of the Nation address. Nothing said about that, but, much said about, how Eskom will be turned around, but nothing about the unbundling itself. Are you surprised?
I am surprised. I'm not surprised that he didn't mention unbundling because I presume one can argue that he left it to the minister to say. But what is surprising that he committed to an immediate and urgent 230 billion without mentioning unbundling. And that's really where it creates, in a technical terms, a serious problem of moral hazard that now they're trying to scramble to contain it. Because you can't do unconditional bailout of that order of magnitude for Eskom and not do it for all other SOEs. And then where is the money going to come from and where is it going to end? So yes, I'm surprised, but not because it wasn't associated with the bailout. And I think one has to then add to that Eskom is a problem, but bigger problem is that, and this is where I think the president, in my view, should have spelled it out in the State of the Nation. What is our energy policy going forward? It cannot and should not be dependent on Eskom, which is broken.
Doc, again, I asked the previous, analyst that we spoke to, and the issue, of course, of the Auditor General's report that came out today, quite scathing. You have out of more than 200 municipalities, just 18 that are receiving clean audits. Another slap in the face if we look at the manner in which South Africa's economies are performing at this stage. Exactly.
And if you then add to that, not only it's a blight on our whole national face, so to speak, and it's related to all the political parties. It's got a complex root, and the fact that it's getting worse, not getting better. The most important part of it is that when municipalities don't function in the modern economy, the economy doesn't function. When in modern economies, when municipalities don't function, the notion of developmental state and welfare of the nation, welfare of the citizens, bearing in mind that 65 to 70% of our nation already as we speak are living within these so-called municipalities that are totally dysfunctional. So I would have liked to see the president, as part of his growth turnaround, put municipalities right at the top. Not infrastructure, municipalities, because if we can get that right, the economy at the local level begins to turn around, to revive. And of course, that requires political will. That when councillors and municipal managers and mayors are caught with this type of audit, they must resign immediately and be sued. And if they're culprit, they got to be openly made accountable. We cannot have this type of 8 out of 100 municipalities only conforming to the law.
All right, thank you very much for your time there, Dr. Iraj Abedian, who is the Chief Economist with Pan-African Investments and Research Services. Let's take a short break here on The Full View. We'll have more news when we get back.